Hi, everyone. Today we're going to talk about a new term, and that term is matter. Um, as always, if you need to get a hold of me, the best way to do that is using my email address, rcrawford@jcpsmail.org. So let's take a look at what matter is. So matter is really just anything that is made of atoms. If we were to look at this pencil, we have a couple of substances that make it up. We could look at the pencil lead or the graphite. That is indeed made of carbon atoms. If we were to look at the wood itself, wood is made of some molecules in long chains that are a combination of hydrogen, oxygen, and carbon atoms. But really, matter is just anything that is made of atoms. So this pencil would be an example of matter. And it's made of matter because matter and atoms essentially mean the same thing. Atoms are matter. Now, I know that we've talked about living things being made of atoms, but that also means that all living things are made of matter, or living things are matter. So, human beings like you, any pets you have, even the germs on your hand, um, things that are large and things that are small are made of atoms, so they are also made of matter, or you might even just say they are matter. Your house, the trees, the molecules of air around us, and even the surface of the earth, the ground that we walk on, made of atoms, so they are matter. Essentially, everything on earth is made of atoms, so everything on earth is matter. So if we were to include in that all the land, all of the water in the oceans and in the streams, all of the air, and every living thing, all of those things are made of atoms, so they are matter. So matter is a very, very general term. And you may ask yourself, well, if everything is made of matter, then what's the deal? Well, there is another category. There's another category of stuff that is not matter. And we'll take a look at that here over the next couple of days. Now, I will tell you that my definition of matter is everything that is made of atoms. But the most standard definition that you're going to run into is quite a bit different, and I think it's a little bit more confusing. As a matter of fact, in the reading guide that we've already seen, you will have ran into this definition. So in the text, it may say matter is anything that has mass and volume. Now, it is true that is a good definition of matter. And mass and volume are two properties of all matter, so it's a good way to describe it. But I find the problem is most students may not be certain what mass and volume are. So I want to take a look at both mass and volume so that we can understand this definition that you're going to run into over and over. So let's start with mass. And I feel like this picture is a good way for you to understand mass. So first off, these are both properties and they're also measurements. Mass is a measure of the amount of atoms or matter in an object. Okay, so let's take a look at this particular object. So on this balance or on this seesaw, we have two different cubes. We have two different objects. Now we can see that this cube over here that is up in the air, it is has less atoms in it. I can see one, two, three. I can see about 8 atoms that make that up. Now, if we look at the other cube on the other end of the seesaw or the balance that's down, we can see that it has many, many more atoms in it. Now, remember, mass is a measure of the amount of atoms. So, quite frankly, we could just count the atoms. If this one only has 8, and let's just estimate and say this one has 20, then we can say that this cube down here that is on the lower plank of the seesaw, we can say that it has more atoms, so it must have more mass. Conversely, we might look up here and say, oh, this has fewer atoms, this has less atoms, so it's going to have less mass. Mass is a measure of the amount of atoms in an object. Now, it is true mass and weight are a lot alike, but they are not the same thing, they're only similar. Um, and really for now, we can say that something that has less mass is lighter, whereas something that may have more mass is heavier. And that's not a terrible place for you to be thinking for now. So mass, a measure of the amount of atoms in an object. So let's take a look at volume. So volume is also a measurement. It's also a property of all matter. And volume is simply a measure of the amount of space that an object takes up in 3D. Now, 3D means three dimensions. And I know that you guys have done some work in math where you had to measure different objects, and you may have measured length, width, and height. Well, those are three dimensions: length, width, height. Okay, so volume, a measure of the amount of space an object takes up in 3D or in three dimensions. So this is pretty straightforward. We can see here we have a balloon. Obviously, it is not inflated. It doesn't take up much space. It takes up much less space. So we would say that this uninflated balloon has less volume. On the other hand, if we put some air in that same balloon, now it takes up more space. And so we can say that it would have more volume. So really, volume is just a measurement of the amount of space that an object is going to take up. So our standard definition that you're going to run into lots in your science career for matter is anything that has mass and volume. And remember, mass and volume are just two properties of all matter. That means, by the way, that all atoms must have mass and volume. And so we definitely, since we looked inside of an atom, we know where that mass comes from, and we know that they all take up space. So anything that has mass and volume, that is matter. Mass is a measure of the amount of atoms in an object. So some objects may have fewer atoms, some objects may have more atoms, and we can compare this mass to weight. And volume is the measure of the amount of space an object takes up in three dimensions. So some objects take up less space and have less volume. Some objects will take up more space and have more volume. So I think that really covers what I need you to know for today about what matter is. Remember, my definition is matter is anything that is made up of atoms. I hope you guys have a great day.